Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Divi Nation. Divi Nation is a podcast and video show by Elegant Themes, the creators of Divi, the ultimate WordPress theme and visual page builder. The goal of Divi Nation is really simple. We want to provide you with the knowledge, insights, and supportive community that you need to be successful with WordPress and Divi. I'm your host, Nathan B. Weller, and as your host, it's my job to facilitate that success by having various guests from the Divi and wider WordPress community onto the show to share their stories and experiences with you. In this episode, I'm interviewing John Wooten of Artillery Media, which is based out of Lincoln, Nebraska. And if you've been paying attention, you know that last week we interviewed Andrew Tucson, who's also from Lincoln, Nebraska. And next week, we're interviewing another person from Lincoln, Nebraska. So, Lincoln, Nebraska, you can never say that the Divi Nation doesn't love you. Back to this week's show. So when I caught up with John Wooten, this week's guest, on Skype, he shared his freelancer story, his WordPress story, and his web design story. And then we got into the nitty-gritty details of how he's developed multiple streams of recurring revenue, as well as begun to vertically optimize the niches that he's targeting with his web design services. Oh, and in the excitement of the moment, we throw out a couple free Divi business ideas for anyone who wants to scoop them up and run with it. All of that and more in today's episode of Divi Nation. Here it is. John, welcome to Divi Nation.
What is up?
Not too much. I'm glad that we finally got you on the show. It's funny at this stage in the game, we're 40 some episodes deep. I kind of know a huge number of people in the Divi community now, and there's always this laundry list of people who it's like, oh man, I gotta have that person on the show. And you've been one of those people for a long time, so I'm glad we've made it happen today and we got you on the show.
I'm so honored. Super pumped to be here.
And it's cool. You were just mentioning that we're kind of on a Lincoln, Nebraska roll. We had Lincoln, Nebraska last week with Andrew. We've got you this week, and I believe next week I'm recording with someone else who works in your office, correct?
Midwest, Silicon Prairie strikes again. Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out. I told Andrew I'd give him a shout out. So shout out to Andrew. He's rocking and rolling. And thanks for the shout out, brother.
Awesome. Very cool. So one thing I like to do to get the show started is just kind of like get an idea for what a day in your life is like. There's so many people who approach either the freelance or the small agency or the Divi designer developer lifestyle. It's all kind of remote work in general. And a lot of people have different styles, different flares for it. What does that look like for you on the average day?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think about half my days are here at the office, and then half my days are at the home office. Cool. And I do several different things with web design, a few different products that I work on throughout the day. And then I also tour in a band part-time. Very cool. So I feel like a lot of web designers started out because their band needed a website. But
I hear that all the time.
I bet. Oh, yeah. But Jake and I both tour in a band part-time. So sometimes that means a weekend. Sometimes that means 2 weeks or a week here or there. And so it's awesome to work in an industry where you can take your work with you on the road and get things done. But most of the time, I get up probably around 7:30 or 8 and get into the office probably do some work at home, get in the office about 10, leave the office about 4 and work out, and then maybe do a little bit more after that and call it a day. That's nice. Pretty much. And a new thing I'm doing this year, though, is like Fridays at 1 p.m. is like the cutoff. That's when the weekend starts. And so that's been a kind of a nice treat to have as a working for yourself kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I've been on this kick. I was actually just talking with Mitch and Nick and Josh, one of our developers, about this yesterday. I've been really into all these new planners and journals that I keep seeing on my Facebook feed, probably because I clicked on one of them at some point, and so I get flooded with ads. But it seems to be kind of a trendy product right now to have these sort of like day, week, and month planners that have like kind of science-backed ways of organizing your time. And I've been really digging like kind of aggregating all these different methods and figuring out what works for me and kind of like designing these routines that help me be a little bit healthier or be a little bit happier or whatever the case may be. And I know that like shortening work hours is one of the things that everybody suggests, because it's like if you cut down to say maybe like 6 hours a day instead of 8, on average more people tend to get more work done, and starting like weekends and stuff sooner is another thing that is a lot of times people talk about. That's something they adopt because if they know that that's coming, then they work more efficiently throughout the week, because they really want to take advantage of that extra time to just be doing nothing or leisure activities or whatever.
Yeah, and for me, Friday afternoons, there's not a lot of emails coming in. I feel like clients are like, I'll just email on Monday or next week. Yep. And then when I left my last full-time job 11 years ago, it is now, but it was for a nonprofit working on their website, and this certain nonprofit had very successful. At the time, they had 1 million members paying $15 a year to be part of their deal, and I thought that this would be it. I'm going to be happy here, working on a handful of websites all the time. And 4 months into it, I was going insane. But
what was it that drove you insane about it?
I think it was just knowing that, in my way, my dad's an entrepreneur. He's a small church pastor, and just knowing
that works.
Other entrepreneurs that were out making things happen, and it was up to them how much they made or their work-life balance and the scheduling that you mentioned. And I just craved that. I just craved for it. And so when I left that job to go tour, I think my boss probably thought I was insane. So I was leaving to go play music and do web design, and I was leaving this great job with benefits and a decent salary. Yeah. But they have that questionnaire to fill out. What would you change different? And I remember writing 2 things down. I was like, hey, if casual dress is good for Friday, why can't it be good for every day? That was one thing I put. And the other thing I put was, speaking of Fridays, nobody gets anything done between like 1 and 5. So just have like a company lunch on Fridays at noon, and have like a big end of the week powwow. Your recruiting for HR would go through the roof if people heard that. Hey, go work for this company. And anyway, so for all you company owners out there, Andrew, maybe it's something to think about for your
for the evil empire.
The evil afternoon. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. Nobody. Well, that's like actually one of the things about these like ritual and day planners is like the idea that because we kind of have like an 8-hour work day, 40-hour work week, and all this other stuff that was kind of like optimized for machines and not people. We don't really. Everybody's kind of like naturally adjusted to sort of waste time at certain intervals or areas throughout the week just to make it bearable, because no one can work that long 100% focused every day, 6 to 7 days a week. It's not humanly possible. So everybody's got these kind of ways that they distract themselves or give themselves breaks when they don't have an official break. And so I think a lot of people are finding out that, especially people like us who either work remotely for a company with flexible 24/7 hours, or who work for themselves, they're finding, if I just like focus on getting the tasks done instead of, filling time, I end up having a lot more time, which I think is awesome. So maybe that's the end of that tangent, but I just had to comment on it because I love that about this community, and I'm on a big kick right now too with that. So
yeah, this is my planner, and I just,
nice.
Every day I have things written down, and when the list is done, that work day is for the most part over, unless you hit those spurts. For me, sometimes it's at night. You hit that creative spurt, and you're like, all right, let's go, let's do this. You take some pre-workout maybe, and you start going. So yeah, I feel you.
I live for those moments. I love that. When I get on a kick, oh man, that's amazing. I just, I had to learn that every day can't be that or you get burnt out, but I love doing that.
Oh yeah.
Let's get back to you and your story. Let's get the origin story of John Wooten, the freelancer. When did you said 11 years you broke away from this company and you went out to do music and web design. Was that your first foray? I mean, it sounds like you were doing web design beforehand, so I'm assuming that wasn't your first foray into WordPress in general. But when you started that period of your life, how are you approaching it from a design development standpoint? Like, what was your system like? What tools did you use?
Sure. Well, going into college, I didn't even have an email address. Like I went to a super small private high school, class of 11 graduating. Not 2011, I wish, but 11 of us. So I went into college thinking I was going to do something totally different. And I had to take an intro to technology class. And in that class, along with building my very first PowerPoint, I had to build a Dreamweaver site, a 4-page HTML code straight up with tables. And it was I wish I still had it. It's the most hideous thing. But through that, I discovered this old image program called Fireworks, which is no longer in existence. But
I remember Fireworks.
You can animate things in Fireworks. So I'd spend hours in this computer lab animating. Long story short, one of the instructors saw me in there all the time and said, "Hey, you should just student work here and work for me on the website." And he taught me Flash, and so I learned ActionScript, the whole thing.
No, not Flash.
Oh yeah. And before I knew it, I was building custom MySpace Flash pages.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I probably no joke. I probably did at least 50. I had this little package of custom MySpace page and album artwork for like $250 or something like that.
Yeah. There's so many people I talk to who got their web design careers started by tinkering with their MySpace pages or their like early Zynga pages or something like that, where it's like there's some form of HTML and inline CSS that was possible, and they just went to town, and that they caught an itch that they couldn't satisfy. So that's awesome.
And that really started initially I was attracted to the design side of things, but then as you mentioned, in order to do those cool things on MySpace or in Flash, you had to learn code. You had to learn this ActionScript or HTML. And so then there's this, developer side. And so I call it diviner when you're like part developer, part designer. I call that a diviner. And that's and then before you know it, someone heard, "Hey, John, you do websites." My dad's church needed a site. I did that one. And classic story, word just got around, and I started doing more sites. And so that was in 2002, I started learning about web design. And from 2002 to about 2006, I was doing it part-time, and I was finishing up school. And I was also in the Marine Corps at the time, reserves, and so I did a tour overseas and came back from that. When I came back from that is when I got the job that I thought would be the end-all jobs, only to quit 4 months later. I'm the worst employee.
Well, so when did that turn into using WordPress?
Sure, okay. So probably around 2000, I want to say like 2005 or so. It was right before I quit that job. I was introduced to WordPress, and actually I learned WordPress on that job because they wanted a blog, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to learn WordPress while building their blog, and then I'll start using it for other sites because I was using a couple other CMSs that I can't remember what they were called at the time, but they just weren't quite enough, and WordPress seemed to be. And I started hearing from some music friends that, hey, you got to check out this WordPress thing.
Very cool. So when you began to take clients and you start, let's jump to the part where you quit that job and you're using, I'm assuming, WordPress. What was it like? What was your kind of, what was that period of time like? Say like just starting out freelancing to like pre-Divi.
Oh yeah, very pre-Divi and kind of before I knew that there were themes that you could purchase.
Oh, okay.
Sure, I knew there were other themes. Like I think at the time, like Kubrick was one of like the main themes or something like that. And I didn't like how it looked, so I was just well, I'm just gonna build my own.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I went to Barnes and Noble and bought a book on how to build WordPress themes, and before you know it, I was doing some, basic marketing site themes, but I was building my own. I was designing them in Photoshop and then presenting them as mock-ups and then coding them up. Back in the day when you didn't have to worry about tablet or mobile, right? You could just do a desktop design, and that was it. Maybe some CSS hacks for other browsers.
Yeah.
So that was I was just using Dreamweaver and Photoshop at the time. And then a couple years into it, I was like, this is not sustainable. It's not scalable. How can I do this better? And then I found out about, around the same time, I think I was following at PSD Tuts. It was like the first one of the Envato blogs out. I was following that, And then when they launched Audio Jungle and Theme Forest and flashed in, that's when I hopped on that train and discovered that, hey, I could buy this theme for $60.
Oh yeah, and have a start, just kickstart your whole process. So what was the thing that eventually, because now you do everything sort of Divi centric. When did that come about, and what were some of the deciding factors in that decision?
Absolutely. So after a while, when you're buying these theme forest themes, not only do you have to constantly renew them for support, which is kind of a hassle, a lot of times they're bloated. Like a certain theme will come with 3 or 4 different sliders. And I know PHP a little bit, but I'm not a guru at it. So I can't necessarily 100% support these themes, right? And so basically after about 12 to 15 of these different themes that I was using, and every theme I bought was a new learning curve. I had to learn how they set up that theme, and some of them were Visual Composer, some were not. And so after so long, some of those themes started to become unsupported because they weren't selling anymore on the store. And I totally get it. Authors are like, hey, I'm not going to support this theme anymore. I've built these new ones now. I'm going to support those. I totally understand. But after telling 2 or 3 clients that, hey, look, this theme, this theme might last a year or 2. It might last 6 months or 3. And I just hated that. Yeah. So a friend introduced me to I was telling a friend of mine, Kelly, about my woes with this letting clients down and just the support nightmare that it had become. And she said, you need to try Divi. And so then at that time I looked on the site, and it was around, I think, 300,000 some users. And I just figured, okay, if even half these people are paying every year, it's going to be in this company's best interest to stick around and support it long term. And so I did a couple sites with it and then never looked back. I will not do any other sites with any other WordPress theme. It's either custom or Divi.
Awesome. Well, the topic I want to talk about today is, there's 2 of them, and we just talked about this beforehand, and it seems like it's a great fit for what you're doing now, or it's a great transition from what you're doing now, or what you're talking about here is this idea of, okay, I only work in Divi now. You have a couple different projects, so maybe we could start by talking about the fact that you have your own work, you have a marketplace. Can you just kind of tell us, like, what are the projects or what are the sources of income that you use Divi for?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my main freelance site is Artillery Media, artillerymedia.com, and that's where most of the custom stuff that we do live. And even if we do a custom theme, the header and footer might be custom, but for a lot of the interior pages, we'll use the Divi Builder plugin.
Ah, yeah, okay.
And you just work some CSS magic on that to make it comply with your theme. So that works out well for us, but 95% what we do is Divi. And so what the custom means then for that is, I'll still design mock-ups for, a home page and a couple interior with Divi in mind. Take the goals of the client for the website, for the design, and as I'm designing it, I am somewhat having Divi in my brain and seeing how we can meet the goals, and also use Divi for this project. So Artillery Media is the main thing. And then for clients who can't quite afford a budget for a custom solution, we have pageinaday.com. And
saw that recently.
Yeah, Jake, who you have on next week, I believe, he runs that, and I help. Obviously, I'm part of that too. And that's mostly what we do here at Artillery. We also do some maintenance plans that I'll probably talk about later. But then about a year ago, I had a client come to me, a well-known Christian musician named Peter Furler, and he was like, hey, I want to do a website with you, but I want to like a Squarespace site. But I don't want to use Squarespace. I want to use WordPress. And he had an Australian accent, so he said it all Australian. It sounded much cooler when he says it. So then I designed his site, and I thought, man, there's got to be a lot of other people who want this kind of look for the Divi sites. And so that's when I thought, okay, well, I see these child themes. Maybe I'll make my own. And so I made the theme that one of the 3 themes that I've made now, called Josephine. And I finished it, and I was like, well, now what? I have, no one cares about, no one knows who I am, no one cares. And so then I approached Nathan at Superfly and just said, hey, I built this child theme, I developed it, it's ready to go. How about we work out some kind of deal here? I put it on the store, and you sell it, and we'll figure out an arrangement. And that's kind of what happened.
That's awesome. So what is your involvement with Superfly now? Are you guys partners? Are you just a vendor in the marketplace? What does that partnership look like today, a year later?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now I help run Superfly with Nathan and Daniel. We're all three in it together, and then I still get paid on a per sale of the products that I have in the store. So right now that would be Josephine theme, Anthem theme, and then we just released one called Arrow this week. We'll be announcing it more next week, but it's on there now. And then we got a couple layouts. There's a layout that I did on there called Beacon that also has like 4 hours of me building it and using CSS tools to build that.
Yeah.
So moving forward, we're super excited to keep launching that. We actually just rolled out a membership club, and it's not just a regular like, oh, here's some layouts or child themes you get. I'm actually trying to build a membership community with it, to where more folks who want to do what we do. They're working for themselves. They're going through their morning routine. They're setting their own schedule, like you mentioned. You just got back from vacation. I just got back from vacation. Having that freedom to decide when that's going to be, and maybe, hey, I'll take some work with me. Maybe I'll do a little bit there, make the vacation last a little longer. But we're super pumped about the membership, because it's just got some great things in there, and we're coming out with a new kind of product called that I'm really excited about, called the Project Pack, which is basically taking, like, we build websites all year round. Some church websites, construction websites, restaurants, all this stuff. And I think what we're looking at doing is taking not just taking the designs of those and changing them a little bit and making them the child themes, but also including, hey, here's our sample proposal that we use with our pricing. And, of course I have to change the client's names and take all that stuff out. Sure. But here's how we sold this to get this certain price point. And here's a sample graphic timeline of how we do our projects with gathering content, design phase, development, all that stuff. So
it's a real sort of like insider, behind the scenes tips and tricks and resources and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it feels good just to kind of see how someone else is doing it. Like I listened to Andrew's interview a few times, and it's just you learn what other people are doing. Iron sharpens iron, Absolutely. That's definitely one of the things that just in general the Divi Nation community does well, I think, is just a lot of people sort of talking shop almost compulsively. Like, you can't get in any of the Facebook groups without people just trading tips, or this is how I've done it, or this is this one that I found, or here's someone else's thing. And I think you're right that iron sharpens iron attitude, that, here's my way, what's your way? Let's refine this or that. That's happening constantly, and I love that. And it's cool that people like yourself are developing and launching sort of like distilled versions of that in memberships and products. So there's plenty. One thing I tell a lot of people now, especially in the groups, the Divi community, and you've heard this probably umpteen times, is one of the few communities I've ever been a part of where people just give. Like, here's a tutorial on this.
Yep.
Here's a tutorial on this. Here's how I approached finding new clients, and here's how I approach pricing, because there's plenty of room in the market. Web design is such a big market. There's room for everyone. And rising tide raises all boats.
Absolutely. Another thing that a lot of people talk about, a lot of the people who I consider the folks who get it, they all end up referencing something along those lines at some point, because they're like, yeah, I just realized that, when I make the whole community better, I do better, and so I love that we have like kind of a core group of people within the Divi community who really believe that, because it's obvious in how those folks conduct themselves, and it makes it fun to be a part of that. So there's two things that I want to talk about. You mentioned it to me earlier, and I'll just kind of lob them to you now so that we can just get into it. We got about 10 to 15 minutes left. and that might be pushing it, but I still want to hit these things. You told me that right now one of your big goals is to continue the process of shifting your current service-based businesses into recurring revenue and focusing on recurring revenue. Tell me about that process. What stuff are you converting, and what are some of the clever ways that you've figured out to establish recurring revenue out of what is basically a service industry?
Sure. So I equate to so Jake's pretty newer at web design. I think he has been doing it now for a year and a half, and I kind of found him. He was in one of the bands that I was in. I kind of trained him, and so he just wants to take every website that he can get. You know, this industry, it's fun, it's new, it's exciting, and I equate to like flipping houses. Like if you go and you flip 10 different unique homes, totally different, it probably is fun and exciting. But eventually you're going to be like, man, if I got really good at flipping the same kind of house, I could do this faster. And that's kind of where I am with web design. It's more so of okay, for over a decade now, I've been doing hundreds of sites, all different kinds of sites. And a lot of times you do a site for a client, they pay you, and then you may not work with them again, or you may see them in 3 or 4 years, or sometimes 5 or 7 years, or way too long before they redo their website. And so in an effort to increase repeat business, I was like, well, recurring revenue is part of that. And that's when we rolled out our maintenance security plans. If you don't offer a maintenance security plan, start doing that. It'll start small, but now we have around 100 clients on our maintenance and security plans. And that does a couple things. Number one, it gives us some nice stable revenue every month to have, so we can kind of forecast monthly revenues starting with a nice strong base. But number two, it keeps you in constant contact with those clients. Not that they contact you every week, but you have this ongoing working relationship. That means the next time they want to redo their website, you're going to come to their mind first because you've been there this whole time. Yeah. And speaking of recurring revenue, we're actually kind of flirting with the idea of almost selling websites as, instead of, right now our average website range is probably anywhere from $2,500 to $7,500. I've done some for quite a bit more, but for me, I feel like the larger the project, the more red tape you kind of run into, and the more design by committee kind of happens. Oh yeah. But for those clients that are spending $3,500, $4,000, the thought came to my brain like, well, what if instead of paying $3,600 up front, what if they paid $100 a month for 3 years? That's 36 months, $3,600, and at the end of the 3 years, it's almost like a cell phone. Like, hey, here's your new phone, and you're going to keep paying them monthly. Hey, here's your freshened up website design, and you just keep going. Now, if I would have done that with these 100 clients that I have on the maintenance plan, I'd probably be sitting on a beach right now or something like that. But
so I love this idea. You mentioned that's sort of like leasing a website instead of buying it outright. And
I do that with I have a smaller side business that gears websites for motivational speakers, and they pay a monthly fee.
Oh wow! Is that like a multi-site that you run or something like that?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
exactly what it is. Yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool. I'll have to talk to you about that. I got a side project that I'm considering multi-site for. So back to this leasing idea, this idea of that $100 per month. I just want to kind of iron out some of the details in case anybody else wants to think about that for their business. When you say they pay $100 a month, what do they get that first month? Like, so you say, hey, you want to get a website? All it takes is $100 to get started, and a 3-year, agreement. What do they get when they click buy?
Sure. So how I probably do it, because we haven't tried this yet. There's a couple of clients that we're talking to, and Jake will probably talk a little more about this next week because he's kind of spearheading this for us. But how I would do it is, we have these child themes that I've made, and basically I would kind of duplicate the model that I have for the speakers. The speakers, I have 3 layouts that they choose. They can go and choose, look at 3 different demos, and they pick which one they want as a starting point.
Sure. Okay.
And then we go in and we fill out the content for them. Now, if they want to, I'm thinking if they can use a child theme that we've used or one of these project packs that we're getting ready for the membership program, then great. I think the $100 a start is going to be great. But if they have some unique needs, then there might be some kind of a smaller upfront cost. Like, okay, you want to add this e-commerce piece on, or you want to have this special landing page or this other specially designed out deal that's beyond the basic marketing site. Mm-hmm. Then there would probably be some kind of a smaller upfront charge, but still nothing like, not even half of what they would normally pay the $3,500 or $4,000 plus.
So like $100 subscription with add-ons, like a la carte options.
Absolutely. Yeah. And actually on our pageinaday.com site, we have a quote builder that prospective clients can go in there and they can kind of add things. E-commerce, yes. Do I need an email opt-in? Yes. Do I need this? How many extra pages do I need besides the home page? And of course they can consult with us on it too, but it gives them a good idea of roughly what kind of ballpark range they're looking at. So yeah, the biggest hurdle I think we're going to have with this website lease idea is some businesses like to write off that whole amount in that year.
Sure.
They have a marketing budget for that year. So it'll be interesting to see how it works.
It's when you pitch all those add-ons.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point. But I think it's just, I think it takes the guesswork out of, a client. Look, we're going to consult with you once a quarter or once a month or whatnot and give you new ideas. Because as your clientele grows, then your monthly base grows. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden when a sweet feature like Divi Leads comes out, well, then I'll be more proactive about approaching clients like, hey, this just came out. We can add this to your site today, as opposed to, well, I would do that, but I don't know if I have time. And, I got these new sites I got to do. Mm-hmm. So it kind of takes the roller coaster out of the income and levels it out.
Totally.
So I'm excited. The maintenance plan has done that for me. It really gave me a solid base income. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this will go. But obviously, if you're used to getting, if you're used to charging $3,000 and getting that in the first couple months, mm-hmm. and now you're only getting $200, you kind of have to have some revenue kind of saved up.
Well, that's a little bit where your product side comes in, I would imagine, mm-hmm. right? Like for you anyway. That's not going to be the case for everybody, but so far we're talking about recurring revenue. You have your maintenance plans, you have your clients who you're trying to convert to a subscription model, and then you also have your products. And so your products are probably, they're the most easily recurring income, absolutely. I would imagine, because you build it once.
If I could just rent those every month.
Well, you could go the platform route, which is what Copyblogger did when they created the Rainmaker platform. They took all their plugins and themes and they just put them in a multi-site on top of WordPress and created a content marketing platform for people. So if you had a niche that you were focused on, you could create a platform instead of a service.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Speaking of niches, imagine if you had, like with the speakers that we do, I think we have around 30 speakers on that little side business. Mm-hmm. And there's a basic tier, which is a one-page site, and then the pro level. In the pro level, you get landing pages and split testing ability. Well, that would be the Divi Builder plugin, right? Yeah. That's what that is. And then I have a few pre-made layouts for them, like a press page layout or a ebook opt-in layout. And so imagine if I had 100 speakers, and next week I made a new ebook. Here's a new squeeze page for an ebook that you wrote, or a PDF or something like that. Get my 5 anti-bullying tips or whatever. Or if I had 100 church websites, and that was my niche market, every Easter I could come out with here's the 2017 Easter landing page. Just change your service times and change your images, and there you go. Yeah,
that was the next thing I wanted to talk to you about. Is you had said that one of the ways that you're trying to optimize your business is by creating these vertical niche markets. And churches is, I think, a great example. But maybe you could speak more to that point and some of the ideas you have in that area, that idea of vertical niche markets.
Sure. We'll see if I get around to it. So if someone takes my idea and runs with it, awesome. More power to you. But like I mentioned before, my dad's a small church pastor, and most churches between 100, 300 members, 400 members, they don't have a full-time dedicated web person on staff. Larger churches do. They have a tech team, but for that small church, I even had churches come to me, a small church, and say, hey, we need a website up really fast because Bob used to do our website. He doesn't go here anymore, and it was a really ugly kind of transition. We don't want him to have any access at all because we're afraid of what he's going to put on the site. And so I just thought, man, Divi is the perfect platform to go out and get 50, 100 churches on there, come up with 6 different layouts, and same kind of deal. They go to your site, they pick which layout they want to start with. You might have some add-ons. You have a nice designed out sermon series page with different slots for the different weeks. And oh, it'd be great. And those extra here's your Christmas and New Year's service times layout for this year. Just enjoy. It's free. Every year you're sending out these free resources, and they're just paying that monthly fee and spreading the good news about your work to other churches. That would be great. Like I said, my time's tied up right now with the artillery stuff and Superfly and the motivational speaker sites. But I'll tell you what, once you grow that recurring revenue base and you start getting that check every month and it starts to become significant, it's just like, yeah, I'm glad I did this. It's a lot of work on the front end, but you'll be.
And you start having all this time to develop these ideas. I don't know, a lot of people, I think a lot of people have good ideas, but they don't have either the time, planning, resources, whatever. There's something missing on the execution side, and by establishing recurring revenue, you open yourself up, you give yourself more room to maneuver and more room to work on those kind of fun, outside the box or experimental things that could turn into something significant, which this type of thing could definitely be that vertical integration right there, that vertical market. I was just taking a peek on my local install at Divi here real quick, and you had mentioned we were talking about platform features and upselling people to different stuff, and I just realized that you could use the Divi role editor for that exactly. So every website on a certain, depending on your subscription level, you could have certain things disabled, and as soon as they upgrade, you enable them. Yeah, exactly. As soon as they go to the next tier, you just
Let's do it. Come on, Nathan.
I know, right?
What are we doing?
So yeah, that's a cool idea. I would love to see someone in the community do this and then report back. As we'll do a podcast episode on or something. So if anybody's out there with more time than the two of us right now, and you want to create a platform version where you're selling people these websites and you're controlling features with the role editor and stuff like that, that would be really cool to hear about. I think we're hitting the end of our time together. I love everything you've talked about today. I love these types of sort of blue sky brainstorming, and this has worked for me. It's just, I love hashing things out and talking shop like this. Really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me so much. Yeah.
Well, that's all for this episode of Divi Nation. Thanks for tuning in. I just want to give another big thank you to our guest, John Wooten, for coming on the show. If you have any questions about what we discussed in today's episode, feel free to leave them in the comments section on the Elegant Themes blog, and we'll be sure to respond. Thanks again for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you all around the community. And as always, we'll be back here next week with another episode of Divi Nation.